long as that's all right with everyone. Linda and Lily, there aren't any images with you. All right. Hey. Anne, do you have any particular questions you'd like to start with? I know Lori's still working on joining.
I don't really have any particular questions. I'm just trying to stay informed.
A worthy cause. I'm sorry if we make that difficult.
No, you're actually doing it really, really well. And for me personally, it's been great to have you do videos instead of sending out long streams of things to read. So that's been great. No, you're doing a fabulous job, but there's a lot to keep up with right now. And
so much.
So I don't know how you're managing it, but thank you.
That's kind of you. Hello, Gloria.
Hello.
Nothing like an awkward silence in a Zoom meeting. Hey, Lori.
I made it back and only one this time.
All right. Hello, Justine.
Hi. How are you?
Well.
Good.
So we're just sort of here to hold space for questions or thoughts. The general theme, of course, is enrollment and the financial well-being of the school, but we don't have to stick to that too tightly if people have other thoughts, other musings. We could also ask Gloria to sing a song.
Oh, only if Lori joins me.
You don't want me to join you.
Jazz, maybe I'll ask the first question here. I wondered if you might talk a little bit about just in general the approach to, well, in light of the administrative cutbacks with enrollment and marketing and development, if you might share a little bit more deeply about your thoughts. I know the recent evening you said, you know, or on the video it said, we're not really in a place to put a lot of resources toward those areas this particular year. And I'd just like to hear more about that if you're willing.
Sure. It's not a very exciting story, but really we cut non-personnel categories first, and then we cut where we felt like we possibly could, and then we had to go a little bit farther in some categories. And I couldn't imagine saying, you know what, we're going to combine the 3rd and 4th grades next year so that we can preserve this administrative position. We had to prioritize teaching positions in those final decisions. I think that also we're going to be recalibrating to our actual organization size. We haven't been at this size in a long time, and we don't quite remember what that is and what that means. And so we'll be discovering that anew to some extent, and sort of looking to younger schools to help us get a sense for how they hold those functions. And there's going to be some bumps in the road. I'm really sad about it, but I think it's the best of the bad options that we had available.
That makes sense to me. I guess I just was curious at what point, and it sounds in your answer just now that you are definitely going to be working on a different new level with those areas this coming year. But where do you find the balance of, cutting where we need to cut and paying attention to enrollment issues, marketing issues, development issues? It looked like perhaps there was, so I guess what will that look like, or it's evolving? And maybe you can't answer any of this. I observe the cuts, I understand the cuts, and then I turn and say, okay, and ... and I just become curious.
Yeah, I think that for all those three functionalities, what we're going to have next year is a placeholder. And to be able to keep those processes alive, some of the core functionality, and to be able to, from a really maybe too authentic place, ask ourselves what we need from that at our school.
Thank you.
It's going to be hard.
It may be that a school of this size will require different kinds of involvement from the board. So, I mean, I recently, just to speak to your question about enrollment, development, and marketing, one of the things we recently talked about was how the board, how the committees on the board could reflect next year's administrative reality. So where someone might have been the chair of the enrollment committee and someone else might have been the chair of the development committee, maybe someone chairs a committee that, just like the administrative structure at this moment, combines all those things. And maybe we would do a lot more hands-on volunteering, and we need a lot more people in the way of parents and volunteers, like a younger school. Yeah.
At the garden school back in Georgia, we had just over 100 students last year, and they'll have around 130 this coming year. And of course, last year it felt like this was a whole order of magnitude larger, and yet here we are. And our administrative team at the garden school was that we had 2 full-time administrators and 1 half-time person. And we definitely could have used 3 more highly qualified colleagues to up our game, but we were able to do the core of what the school needed from us. Linda, Matthew, Thomas, Christopher, and David, you're very mysterious in here. I don't know if you want to share any questions or any thoughts, anything that's been on your heart.
Jazz?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I just am uninformed, but I'm not sure if I know what specific cuts have been made. And I'm particularly interested in how the high school is going to function, and particularly 12th grade. I have asked you in a couple of emails for what teachers are returning and what aren't. So can you, if that's all right with everybody else, describe more of what the high school is going to function like and what teachers will be there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tricky because we do want to let teachers share their news in their own time and on their own terms. But, and then also we're still working on figuring it out. The high school is laser focused on graduation right now and just closing out the school year, getting grades in and reports and so on. So a lot of these conversations that we know we need to have and we're looking forward to having have only happened in sort of the sketches that we've got the outlines of the conversations we're going to be having. We're going to be saving a lot of the substance of those for after graduation. That said, we've asked our teachers to go to adjunct status in order to be able to preserve as much of the students' experience as possible, and recognizing that that's not great for the teachers, and that in some cases it may end up meaning that teachers have to find other work. But at this point, there are not any teachers who aren't planning to at least come back to teach a couple of blocks on adjunct status. for the high school students. That said, our daily team, of course, will be much smaller, and we're still trying to figure out what the way that we've done it in the past is we've said who's here, and therefore that's what the students will be learning. And that is a completely valid way to do it. But one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing a little bit differently is to take that from the other direction and say, what do we really want the students to have and to learn and to do and to be able to be next year? And which of those are things that can be really well taught by the people who are here, and which of those are things that we might want to contract out for or look elsewhere for. It feels weird to use contractors while we're also laying off teachers or cutting their hours significantly, moving teachers from full-time to adjunct status. And yet, I do think that that's actually what our student experience is asking of us right now.
Can I follow up with a couple more on that? Are you saying just for the high school that they're all moved to adjunct, or is that true for the whole school?
So that's true for everyone who's not specifically holding A grade, an A class.
So please explain. Up through 6th grade, they have teachers full-time and contracts, and just past that, or is it just high school? What do you mean?
I'm actually going to defer on that one. We have a couple more conversations that need to happen in the high school to figure out what that structure is. And I want to make sure that we've had those conversations with the faculty first.
Linda, did you see the state of the school that Jazz sent out to the community on Friday? There was
Yes.
a pretty comprehensive overview of some of the changes that were taking place. I know it doesn't answer perhaps the details or the specifics, but
Yes, I was the third person to watch it on Friday. And yeah, it has not been answering the questions I've been asking for a few weeks. And part of what I'm struggling with is time keeps going by and these deadlines keep happening. And yet I can't seem to get information on what's really extremely significant changes to the high school, and particularly for the seniors.
Linda, it's not that those answers exist and we're withholding them. We are trying to figure out what it means to be a school in these new parameters. And every school is asking these sorts of questions. And it is true that we're asking parents to trust us, that we're asking parents to come along with us. And what we are able to share is the parameters within which we're making decisions and sort of the people who are making those decisions, what we're looking at, what our priorities are. But so many of these decisions have not yet been made. And not only that, but once they're made, we're going to be reconsidering constantly. It's going to be something pretty new that we're doing next year. And so we're going to be checking in on it and recalibrating as we go. And it is going to be a little bit emotionally exhausting in some ways.
Just to make sure that this is clear, I wasn't suggesting that you were specifically withholding information from me. I know that there's information out there because I hear bits and pieces from various people. And I just am asking to find out what you're planning. I know the future is extremely unknown. And all of the school has done a tremendous job with this transition that was thrust upon everybody immediately. I think the school's probably done a better job than most of the larger schools. So that's one advantage of being small. I'm just extremely concerned about the high school. And I feel that, I haven't been hearing much attention to the high school and specifically the 12th graders. This is significant being their senior year. And I've heard from the high school kids when they had the conversation with you, that they're all very concerned about how they're going to feel like seniors and what's going to make this year be special. So I'm just kind of sharing that same concern me as the parent has.
It's going to be interesting to see how we can help our students differentiate between what changes are related to the campus change and what changes are related to the pandemic. So, for example, right now, the state is saying that student lounge spaces all need to be closed, that there can't be any areas with comfy seating where the students can just sort of hang out and mix. And We will be if those recommendations last into the fall, we will be working with the health department on sort of a one-on-one basis, saying like, okay, sure, but what you're imagining when you say that is this public school where they've got 110 students circling through that space, and we're talking about 20 students. And so I think that there are some ways that we can go around some of them once we figure out what really needs our efforts. But the trips and so many of these sharing milestones and these community gatherings that are such a huge part of what we build up to this crescendo in the senior year, I still haven't even gotten to see it. And so in so many of these conversations when we're saying like, well, how can we do our end of year assembly? Like I have to start from like, okay, well, what's our end of year assembly? Like what do we normally do and what's normally part of that? And it's going to be really sad for a lot of us for a long time. And we do want to make sure that the seniors in particular, but really everyone, the seniors, it's their final moments in a different sort of way. But we have different teachers who are focused in on advocating for different ages. And that's really good because of course our default is to sort of hold all the students, and yet I think it's nice for us to be able to divide people out into advocates and say, okay, everyone's job is to focus in on this particular age group so that we can achieve that sort of balance while also having time to approach it more collaboratively.
One other question, when you mentioned about sometimes looking at, who's here, and then that's what the students would be learning. I think that's harder with the 12th grade, where there may be certain subjects that they kind of need to have. Pardon me?
Yes, I'm saying that that's not the way we're going to be doing it. That we're starting with, what are the list of subjects and blocks and track classes? What are the learning goals? And then we fill in the people on the other side of that, even though that does exacerbate the awkwardness of the staffing downsizes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
I have a question just as a follow-up. Am I understanding correctly that there will be a core group, although very small, of teachers that will be there at the high school or with the high school on a consistent day-to-day basis?
Yes.
And they will be the same teachers, I guess.
Yeah, we're not bringing in new faces for that one, although we are working with this upper school. Sorry, Anne, I cut you off.
I'm not sure I asked that question clearly enough to be sure I'm getting the answer to it. That's what I mean. A group, I know a small group of teachers that will be the same group consistently day to day throughout the year to be there with the high school students.
To a lesser extent than they currently have, but yes. I mean, right now we have 5 full-time teachers in the high school, and then what, 9 half-time teachers?
Yeah.
And next year we're likely, we've got this upper school configuration that we're looking at for the 6th through 12th. And we're likely to have 3 full-time teachers and 7 or so part-time teachers, and they won't be half-time. They will be adjunct teaching blocks and track classes here and there.
So one of the things, in addition to academics, which are very, very important, but as you look at who those teachers are that will be there on a day-to-day basis for those, particularly the seniors, because that's going to be the largest group of the high school, it appears, that there are teachers that really relate well and connect with that group of students. And, they're just, I know all the teachers work to do that and do connect, but then there are some personalities that just mix better with a certain group of kids or whatever. And I would hope that that would be kept in mind so that the interpersonal relationships which are going to be really important for the whole school. But I think the high school is experiencing the biggest change. That there's people there to support them, nurture them.
Yeah,
So that be thought about as you make those decisions.
absolutely. And the teachers have quite a high level of awareness about that also, and it's a priority for them. And so
Okay.
luckily it's not just me holding that lens and trying to sort of force it in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Matt Burke. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having this call. And I'll ask a couple questions, and I apologize if you've already covered it or I'm just late. I'm trying to catch up. So the 3 tiers, I wanted to ask about these sort of 3, you're calling it 3 tiers in terms of different,
There's probably a better name out there that we'll end up
yeah.
with at some point.
Okay. So do you have a sense yet of what the tuition would be across the 3 tiers?
I think that for the in-school tuition, we would love to lower tuition. I think the private school tuition model is deeply flawed, but we haven't figured out a way to do that. For the homeschool program, since it would be 2 days a week of programming, roughly 2/5 of the experience, we would expect that it would be roughly 2/5 of the tuition. And for the hybrid flex program, we were expecting that that'll probably be the same tuition. And we don't anticipate there being a cost savings to the school involved. And if we want to really do it right, there will be a fair amount of extra circling back on the part of the teacher to help fill in gaps for the student and make sure that they're really able to be successful.
Okay, so whatever the set tuition is for the in-school, likewise for the hybrid, and then 2/5 for the remote, more or less.
I'm sorry, Matt, would you repeat that?
Yeah, you're saying like the full tuition or the set tuition per grade for both the hybrid and the in school, and then 2/5 for the remote.
That's what seems most likely right now, but we've got a little bit more math to do before we're able to announce it.
Okay, and then in terms of the school's financial position, what distribution across these different programs what scenario would present the best financial scenario for the school?
Hmm.
Do you have a sense of that? Like, are you aiming for certain numbers in each you'd like?
No, we're not.
No,
We're
okay.
aiming to be creative and try new programs when we know that our family community is looking for more flexibility and for some alternatives. And when we have these teachers who have some time that's suddenly been freed up, and we'd like to be able to provide some opportunities for them to grow a new program rather than needing to look outside the school for other employment.
Okay, and I guess last follow-up question, in terms of enrollment, when would parents need to decide across these 3 different programming options?
I think that, flexibility does need to go both ways to a certain extent. And so,
Sure.
I think the school is being more flexible in terms of its enrollment terms and deadlines and so than we've ever been before. And our parents have also been willing to be unprecedentedly flexible and come along with us on these earlier timelines and so on. So I think that if we can figure out a way to make it work more or less smoothly, we would want to offer the opportunity to switch among them at any point during the year based on the family's needs.
Right. Okay. Thank you for those responses. I'll mute myself.
Hi there, David Pfluger here. Again, thanks for, I agree, thanks for putting this together. It's really helpful. I'm curious if you will have more information coming out in email, or if you could share the PowerPoint from Friday Maybe that's already been shared and I missed that. But those slides and to find out more details around the homeschool curriculum, you know, or the homeschool.
Right. I'm
Yeah,
happy
like,
to.
what would that look like?
I'm happy to share the slides. We shared every single detail that we have on that
Okay.
slide about the homeschool program. We are planning to have a homeschool specific meeting next month. We've got, again, more conversations we need to have internally to make sure that we're all on the same page and all feel good about this before we open that up. And then the parents would have an opportunity to ask the co-teachers some questions and find out more about their priorities and share what their needs are. And that's likely to be next month.
Okay.
And I know that that's a pretty wide range. I am hoping that it would be in the first half of the month.
Okay.
Do you have particular things that you're wondering about that I can add to the list of these conversations that we're having?
Well, I mean, I think the tuition was kind of asked by Matt there, so that was helpful. I was just kind of curious, like what it would look like, trying to anticipate the differences between, you know, what last year was like versus next year.
Yeah, at the school
No
that I'm
specific
coming from, we had a homeschool program from when we began, and it looked a little bit different every year just based on sort of who the students were and how we were configuring it. And we had originally had the students just drop into their class for 2 days a week. I think we offered 1 to 4 days a week that they could drop in and be a homeschool student. And that was disastrous. It was so hard for the teacher to maintain the energy. And then the students who hadn't had yesterday's material felt lost and ended up being more disruptive. And so then the next year we made it, well, it's just going to be these 2 days a week. And then the teachers tried to change their lesson plans accordingly so that those 2 days a week they were teaching something that was only assuming that you'd been there last Thursday. And that worked quite well in the lower grades, but in the upper grades, there's just so much content that you need to get into and through. And the teachers felt that their learning goals were for the students were suffering. So then we had the homeschool students in their own morning lesson. That was a mixed grade morning lesson. Our school had a really strong sort of citizen science, environmental justice focus. And so that was the focus of that multi-age main lesson every morning, or two mornings a week. And then at morning snack recess, they would join in with their class and be in subject classes with their age group for the rest of the day. And that is the model that I have the most experience with being successful from the garden school. I think that subject classes here at a mature Waldorf school are in some ways more sophisticated and do build in a different way than the ones that we had at our 5-year-old pioneer school. And so I expect that we'll end up with a mixture of subject classes where it works just fine for them to join in with their age group. And that is really nice when it's possible. And subject classes where they would be completely over their heads. And so instead, we're just going to offer a subject class to the homeschool group on that topic. Once or
So
twice
for the lower grades, you know, younger children, our daughter's just under 5 here, would that be a mixed age scenario? It
Yes.
would. Okay. Do you know what that range might be?
Well, I think that that's going to depend on enrollment. I think that up through a maximum group of 12 or so, it would be the full age of students in that building. And then if there are more students than that, we would look at breaking it out. We have also talked about the possibility of having 1 day a week where students in grades 1 through 4 attend, and 1 day a week where it's students in grades 5 through 8. But we have been approached by a couple of families who have high school age students that they would be interested in enrolling in a homeschool style program. And then of course, accepting new students in, especially at that age when they're not going to have as much just saturation of time with their peers to really get on the same page with our school culture is, you know, on the one hand, we would love to add a few more students to the high school and mix up the energy in that way. And on the other hand, we just want to be really protective of the energy that we do have.
Thank you.
Jump in there, Justine.
Thank you. I don't think until this moment, Jazz, I fully appreciated what a swirling mix and on the fly and pivot here and pivot there experience this is. I think in my mind, I just didn't realize the extent at which enrollment is shifting and changing, even as we speak. That being said, so there's that appreciation. Wow, that's amazing. And you and everyone else on the forefront are doing a really difficult and challenging task, and I appreciate that. At the same time, and perhaps this again is unanswerable, as a longtime recipient of scholarship money to attend our school and be part of our community, I'm wondering, how are we holding as a community that priority of scholarship in the coming short term and the longer term? Just where is our vision and commitment at this point? And then also specifically, I know you had announced before the pandemic the tuition discount for the long arc of first grade through 12th grade. And I'm wondering about that specific vision and what might have already changed about that in specific, but also more a general, where are we with our vision and our hope as a community in regards to tuition assistance?
I've been talking so much, and I know we've talked about that one internally in a lot of larger groups. Does someone else want to take that one? Okay. So as for the high school discount, I think that that is for us really clearly something that we are buying with those dollars is high school students who are committed to a Waldorf education, and that feels like a really good use of the school's resources still. Tuition adjustment is going to be a totally different question in independent schools in general over these next, Gloria, were they saying 5 years, 6 years? It's going to be, I mean, the NAIS webinar that I was part of last week used the word catastrophic. And we don't know what's going to be necessary. We don't know how we're going to be able to meet that. We have made every possible discretionary cut, and if we want to give more tuition adjustment, the only possible way for us to do that is to lay off more people. And we do hold that as a very fundamental value of our school community. There was a in-person conference that was supposed to take place this summer, and I don't think it's going to anymore, but it had people from the Rudolf Steiner Foundation and from other anthroposophical businesses, and the intention was just to get everyone in a room together and try to figure out what sort of ideas can come forth. And it wasn't that there were some people who had like, oh, here's how we should do tuition. The intention was, if we get the right people together and just stare at each other for long enough, maybe that will arise. And I haven't heard an update on that, but I suspect that, you know, staring at a Zoom screen together is just not going to build that same like etheric momentum to get to a solution. So I'm really sad about that. I mean, we'll add it to the list of things to be sad about that they weren't able to happen. But the school still is thinking about that question and interested in the ideas that come about.
Thank you.
With the last meeting, I guess, was the first meeting that the board did this, but we are planning to have sort of a new regular agenda item that we just check in on around tuition ideas, and just sit together for a few minutes at every single meeting and try to see if there's anything that we're able to check in on, bounce off of one another, look at more creatively.
There are a lot
Jazz?
of ideas being thrown around in terms of all the webinars and the other schools and the collaborating that's going on. So there are a lot of ideas out there and things to look into.
Talking about tuition, I have a question. The tuition prices increase throughout the years, with the senior year being the most expensive. Now that certainly the Hermit Island trip isn't happening, and who knows about other things, I'm just wondering if that's still really justified, that the high school would be paying more per student to the degree that they do, now that they're all in the same building with some of the younger grades. I just wondered if that had been looked at or considered.
Yeah, the finance committee actually took that up at the last meeting, and there is a possibility that if we know for sure that trips won't happen, or even if we're a little bit on the fence, we might take those out of tuition initially, and then there would just be an additional charge if it does come about. But we haven't quite come to a resolution about what's the easiest way to handle that. I will tell you, we sent in our deposit paperwork for Hermit Island, our registration stuff. The organizers are saying it's a go, and they are, they sent this whole long thing about why they think it's consistent with the safety protocols. Of course, it's going to be a moving target, and we'll see how it shakes out. But we do want to preserve those experiences where we can, in a way that's safe and appropriate and consistent with the guidance we're getting from the governor.
I appreciate that. I had understood from my daughter that they had been told that the Hermit Island trip was definitely not happening. So that's where I got that from.
Okay.
Besides trips, because absolutely, I understand that is something that nobody knows right now. I like what you just said, because that gives a little bit more flexibility, and that would have to be the understanding. I'm even just wondering, though, of the part that is for in school, not talking about the trips, if there's still justification that high schoolers would pay more, especially if the teachers aren't even full-time teachers, but presumably there's enough teachers to cover what they need to do, and still they're core teachers, as Anne had asked.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just explain that a little bit.
We did look at the possibility of trying to figure out a way to make a tuition reduction. Of course, we would have to lay off additional teachers in order to do that. And the finance committee ended up saying it was not something that we should be continuing to look at.
So does it cost the same per student in the high school as it does?
It costs much more.
Okay, well then that would justify them paying more. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
I thought maybe if they were now in the same building and only had one classroom. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I thought that too, actually, originally, and I was disappointed when I went digging and was not able to find, that flexibility I'd hoped to find.
And with their teachers being adjunct rather than being contract. My other question is about, you had said something in Friday's presentation about outside spaces. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We've got 22 acres of beautiful woods, and we're right up against the Nature Conservancy land. So we have over 100 acres that is available to our students during most of the school days. And so we're hoping to use it a little bit more, use it not only more frequently, but more intentionally.
Okay, I wasn't sure, but that you were talking about maybe having a yurt or having some other types of structures outside and being able to actually have a separate classroom space.
We will be be putting in some outdoor classrooms, but it's protected land, so we can't actually build new structures.
Okay, that's what I was confused on, what you meant by outdoor classroom. Is a yurt considered a structure?
It is.
Okay.
Even though in its original, sort of Mongolian iteration, it was a tent. It was totally temporary. But that's not how the zoning board looks at it these days.
Yeah, thank you.
Jazz,
Mm-hmm.
it's Chris. I have a question.
Sure.
How you doing? I have a question relating to health and safety, which I was going to save for tomorrow, but it has to do with enrollment for me, at least. So I'm having a hard time. So if the CDC says that every kid has to have a shot, you guys are going to mandate that that's what has to happen next year, right?
That's the same way we do with other. If there is, yes.
And they're pretty much, I guess you guys have said, or maybe it'll be said again tomorrow, that we're going to be there. The kids will be wearing masks.
Yes. The current guidance that we have from Vermont is that children over the age of 2 should be wearing a mask. And what that will look like in the fall is difficult to extrapolate out. And so I don't want us to jump to conclusions, but we do want for these end of the year gatherings to give our students a non-alarming experience of wearing a mask, of being part of a group where people are wearing masks. And when the students mess up and touch their masks or take them off or whatever, we are committed to not freaking out and gently reminding them, helping to promote a shared standard.
Okay. And where are we at right now with enrollment? If you already are enrolled and you disenroll before June 1st, it's a 10% penalty?
Well, it's a 90% refund.
Right. But that is true. So it's 3% up until June 1st? Or
May
97%?
1st. And now it's 10%.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Sure. Welcome, Courtney. Hi, Kristen. Are either of you bringing any burning questions with you?
I guess one last question is that is
Sure.
it already set for, is the price of enrollment already decided, or were you saying that there's still some decisions to be made?
We're offering some new programs, and we haven't yet decided how to price those new programs.
But the old program is still the same price?
Yes.
Okay.
I appreciate those of you who are shifting slightly so I know I'm not just frozen. It may be time for you to sing, Gloria.
I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea.
So given that this is the, oh, did someone else start to talk?
Oh yeah, sorry, David here. If we have already, prepaid or given a down payment for tuition, is June 1st, is that still like a deadline for, is there a sliding scale on refund? Is that how that works?
There is, yeah, and that's a totally new thing for us as a school. It used to be that once you signed, you were fully obligated for the year's tuition. And recognizing that we were asking our families to take a little bit more of a leap with us this past February on a different timeline, we rolled out a different tuition refund plan. So depending on when you withdraw, you're eligible for a certain percentage of your tuition to be refunded to you.
Okay, and do you have those dates or kind of?
I knew you were going to ask that. I should have pulled it up before this meeting. I don't. My best recollection, but please don't hold me to this, is that by June 1st, families receive a 90% refund. And by either August 1st or August 15th, families receive a 75% refund. And then somewhere around November or December, it's 50%. And then if it's in January, it's 25% or something like that.
Jazz, I'll jump
Gloria, are
in.
you? Oh, yep, please.
So it's 75% by August 15th, 50% by October 15th, and 75% by December 15th. after December 15th, it's 100% of the tuition obligation for the family.
Thank you.
And David, I could send that to you if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Hey guys, I have a question about enrollment for kindergarten program, and you might not know this yet, but are you guys still planning to have that afternoon time till 3?
We are, yeah. And we've actually had some really wonderful conversations in the early childhood branch around our program and boiling it down to its core and what is the child experience and so on. And so next year we're actually going to be looking at the 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. as a unit and providing an opportunity for early pickup rather than having it be sort of a separate program that people tack on.
Okay, great.
And we will still have care until 5 is what we're currently planning and budgeting around.
Okay. So most of those children, depending upon age, I guess there was something about keeping 2s and 3s separate, would be in that group, maybe.
Yes, and the 2s and 3s class is not confirmed yet. It's something we would like to add. It's something we've been hearing a lot from our families. I think that many families would feel safer if there was just one building they were taking both of their kids into, rather than if they were trying to take one child to one facility and another to a different one.
Okay, thanks.
I have another question. In terms of, well, as I said, the incredible effort that you all are putting in right now. And I think it was Christina who said that we as a community will be looking more to parents this year for help volunteering. And I trust that you all are starting your list now. And I'm wondering, as a parent who will be around next year, do you have specific requests or needs from now until August? Or are you looking at hitting the ground running in September with a list that goes out to parents? And yeah, just wondering about that.
We are hoping to get a list out this month. That's probably overly ambitious, but certainly in June. And I think that a lot of there's lots of caring for our physical plant that happens over the summer, and that will definitely need to happen, and we've got fewer hands to make it happen. And then there will be these new improvements, putting in these outdoor classrooms and some outdoor sinks and a totally new level of going through all the kindergarten toys and sorting out the ones that are tricky to clean, and thinking creatively about how we can make these spaces fun and sanitary. But actually not in that order, other way around. Well, yeah.
I had a couple questions, and I apologize if you already answered some of these earlier. I couldn't get here quite at the start. The summer camps for the summer, the subsidized summer camps, if we already signed up for one of the camps before all of this happened, if we're looking to sign up for those camps as a whole, I assume like the full tuition price would then be just kind of like credited to me for the number of weeks that we sign up for?
Yes.
For the subsidized price? Okay. And then I did want to ask about the volunteer, I don't remember what was called, but there was like a price for each family, and then you'd work it off, and then you would charge families for that ahead of time. Are we looking to charge families for that still, or okay, so that's
no, maybe someday, but that doesn't make sense in our current situation.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question, which I'm not quite sure if this is the right place to ask for it, but I'm just going to ask, is I noticed on the calendar, the school calendar, there are early closures, it looks like, every Thursday or something. I might be misremembering this, at like 2:15. I was hoping you could talk more about that and what that looks like, if there will be any additional care offered, and if that care will have a financial obligation, or just any information you have around that would be really great.
Yeah, so On Thursday evenings in Waldorf schools around the world, actually, the faculty has their meetings. And in some schools, those go, gosh, at the Toronto Waldorf School, I think they still go until like 10 p.m., but our school usually calls it quits around 6. And we are looking forward to being able to tackle our shared work with a little bit more focus and energy next year, which is going to be necessary in order to make sure that we are constantly checking in on the child experience and how we're holding them together. So we're having a pickup, I think it's 45 minutes early every Thursday. Aftercare programming will start when school is out, and it won't be more expensive than aftercare usually is, but families would need to pay for aftercare in order to have their child be part of it on Thursdays also.
Hi, Jazz. I have one more question, a little more
Absolutely.
applicable to high school. Is it possible for a student to go for 1 semester?
Our current tuition structure isn't set up for that. However, I think that there have been times in the past where, if a student was on exchange or something, we were able to make an exception if we were, confident that the Waldorf school that they were visiting in Switzerland or whatever was of a similar caliber and had similar academic priorities and so on.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to follow up with that one with you separately, not as part of this conversation.
I forgot one of my other questions in a line with what Courtney was asking, where you said that we're looking to make the kindergarten program kind of a full day program. Does that mean that folks who are signed up for half days now would be offered to pay for a full, like the tuition would increase for them because they'd be paying for a full day? Or does that mean adjusting?
No, it actually doesn't change what families are paying for the programs that their students are enrolled in. What it changes is the way that we internally are looking at the child's day and the way that we are pacing the activities and looking for in-breaths and out-breaths and the ultimate, closure of the day.
So does that mean the folks who came in the morning would potentially miss part of the rhythm of the day that's now condensed into the morning? Condensed is probably not the right word, but focused in the morning?
Well, we wouldn't necessarily be spreading out the morning programming, but and I think that it's possible that could end up looking different in different classes. I know the early childhood classes each do have their own flavor, and so I want to be sensitive to that also. At the garden school, we had Spanish and Mandarin and American Sign Language, and that was something that students started in the kindergarten, and that happened in the afternoon. And then there was also some citizen science and nature exploration that happened in the afternoon. And so it was best for those students who had the stamina for a full day, and the students who weren't part of that, and that was okay too. They had a shorter day. Similarly, in first grade, we do have some families who pick their child up after lunch. And that does mean that maybe their child doesn't get to go to the farm, or maybe their child doesn't get to have games class or whatever else.
I'm assuming you'd still be including the rest period though after lunch in the kindergarten that's currently there.
Oh,
that wouldn't replace that. Okay.
No. We had someone who was trying to join, but I'm not sure she made it in. So given that this broad theme that we're working with is around enrollment and the school's financial future, Gloria or Christina or Holly or Lori, do one of you want to just share a little picture of what's living in your domain?
Sure, I can start. So from maybe a board perspective, one of the board's goals this year was to have better numbers and better data sooner so that we could craft a budget sooner and just create for all of us in spring, not in the middle of September or in the middle of summer, a picture of what next year will look like. And I just want to point out that we have a draft budget for next year, which is incredible considering all of the things that have been changing. So the budget looks good. It balances. It's it's very hard to see how many cuts had to be made, that we're working with 40% fewer dollars in all these very important categories, but it is a budget that works. And the other thing is that from a board perspective, every year about this time, we're thinking, are we going to balance the budget? And we'll close out the year. I feel pretty confident at this point. Holly, I'd love for you to chime in because I know you're keeping that cash flow document, but when I look at it, I'm just amazed that a year that we went into with $866,000 to raise to break even, that we will absolutely break even. So I'm really, I guess I feel that we've made so much progress in terms of financial stability, that as sad and shifting and uncertain as all this is, I feel more confident this year than I did last year at this time. So confident for the school's health and longevity is what I mean. So I think we have a lot to be grateful for. And yeah, from a fundraising point of view, next year we'll be raising $110,000 perhaps. That's what's kind of penciled into the line item. We'll be instead of 297 students, we'll be, I don't know, 115 or something. And so, we took into account that we're a smaller community. We'll be raising less.
You mean 97, you said 297.
Oh, sorry. So this year we were 197, and then we'll be, I don't know, 110, 120, whatever enrollment shakes out to be. But we took into consideration, in other words, that we'll be a smaller community. So normally parents give 10% of what they pay for tuition as a annual fund gift. And that might be less this year based on the fact that parents may not have as much disposable income. And there'll be fewer of us. So we took that into account. And that's obviously a fundraising goal of $886,000 versus a fundraising goal of $110,000. We've really changed our direction in that sense. So I'm also hopeful that we've given ourselves goals that we can meet and that we will not need to make mid-year cuts. I don't think, the way that we've organized it, it looks to me like, we have a pretty secure year, a financially secure year that we're looking at, unless I think parents can't pay tuition. There's always that possibility but every school's facing that, I suppose. So that's what, just from a board point of view, those are the things that I'm thinking about, and that I'm kind of, in a weird way, I'm heartened, let's say that, even in the midst of this really strange circumstance that we're all in globally.
And to be clear, if we have underestimated and we end up bringing in $700,000 more in development funds than we'd expected, we will find a way to put it to good use.
For sure.
Any last questions or thoughts? Gloria, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say that I would echo what Christina had said in terms of kind of giving an update of the financial realm, that, as Christina mentioned, we already have a draft budget for next year. that we are pretty close to balancing. It still needs some tweaks, and obviously we can easily, by shifting numbers, make it balanced, but we're, in terms of accurately reflecting what we're able to do, we're pretty close, especially in terms of future enrollments, and to be at that stage where we're actually only counting people who have told us that they want to enroll, rather than in prior years we've used a number that's an expected estimate. But because this year is so in flux, we're sticking to adding in a number of people who've told us they're ready to sign their contracts and want to move forward. So that's a big, I think, a really important thing to know, that we're not building in a certain percentage of additional enrollments, because anytime we make a budget this time of year, we always know we're going to have someone sign up in the time between setting and enrollment, and including into the first few months of any given year, we always have people who come on. So, but we're not doing that this year. So I think that's important to say. We're also, in our realm, looking at cash flow right now, and Holly's been keeping a great eye on that and updating that daily. And we are going to, as Christina said, end up this year in the black, not, with balanced, coming out balanced. And then, or maybe not balanced, but coming out ahead. And then we're also working on establishing sort of policies and practices, and looking at what we want to do for the coming year in terms of our tuition assistance policies, SSS, how we want to set parameters, all of those things. So we've got a lot going on, but we hope it's all going to make us stronger and more efficient moving forward.
And I would just add that, Christina and Gloria are like spot on. We have, for the first time, I think in a long time, I served on the board from 2006 to 10 and developed resource and a lot of experience with the school. And I feel like this is the first time we really have a conservative budget. We're grown up. We're living within our means, not living on hopes and dreams, but spending the money that we actually have. And it's taken probably 35 years or 36 years of the school being around for it to behave like a grown up. And I credit Jazz for that.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
You too.